Hey guys, we're back with the final major tab. We have one more tab to go to set up My Menu, which is a great new feature they put into the A9. It's a customizable menu. You can drop in there the things that are most relevant to you or that you access the most for quick and easy access. So this is the toolbox, and we have 7 pages here. Nothing too technical. There's a couple of little hiccups because I'm hooked up to a external display. So we're going to get started here, and we see the monitor brightness, viewfinder bright, and finder color temp are all grayed out because of the external display. Monitor brightness by default will be set to manual, and when you click to enter that menu, there's going to be, it'll say manual. You can click that and change it to sunny day, or you can go down to the adjustment bar under manual, and it's at 0. It's kind of almost like an exposure compensation. It is at 0, and then you can go up to as high as +2 or down to -2 or -2 to increase or decrease the brightness of your monitor. I find the monitor is fine at default. If I am going to be working outside, I'll put it up to 2. Should you go into sunny day, it's probably close to double the +2 in brightness. It's probably like +4, I'd say. It is very bright. Should easily be able to be seen in the ambient light of a sunny day. Running the monitor at that level of brightness will add to battery drain as well as heat gain, and we'll talk about heat in a little bit. But if you need it, if you are a one-handed shooter or you're doing video work or something, it is bright enough on sunny day that it should be viewable. You'll hear some comments dealing with even the 6500 and all that. You know, at its brightest, I still can't see. People don't understand that sunny day isn't that doesn't just make it the +2. That actually like doubles it. So if you're having issues seeing your screen, try sunny day or something. I forget the exact terminology. It's something like that, but you should have no issues. So moving on. Viewfinder brightness. So when you enter this mode, it's going to ask you to put your eye up to the viewfinder, and you're going to have a similar slider. It's going to be auto, which I found to work perfectly fine. It takes a kind of a reading of the ambient light and figures it out. Or you can set it physically to a setting, much like monitor brightness. And then finder color temp, I would suggest that you do not even touch that. Do not change it whatsoever. The reason why is you're trying to get your white balance down. So if you're adjusting your white balance to flash, to fluorescent, or auto, or whatever you're doing, if you then change your viewfinder color temperature, it's going to throw it off because you're going to be not thinking about that you've changed that. You're going to be trying to get auto white balance, or you're trying to manually adjust your white balance, and it's never going to look right to you, and you're going to not be able to figure out why. Or you're going to think it's right, and then when you go to develop your pictures, it's going to be off. And it's something that if you forgot you made an adjustment to this for some reason, it's going to cause you some headaches. There's no reason to adjust this. If you're doing your white balance in camera, the electronic viewfinder is seeing what's hitting the sensor. It's a live view device. You change your temperature in camera, not in your viewfinder. Volume settings. This is just a generic volume control for all the sounds and beeps and blips of the Sony camera. Now, you can play back your video and you can hear it, but it's not a speaker per se. It's an element that generates sound. So you can hear the video, you can make out what's being said, but it's not like you're watching it on a smartphone. So the volume settings do pertain to watching a playback of a video, but just understand that the cameras aren't meant to play back video. They're there so maybe you can hear it, you can make sure the sound worked, but it's not a pleasant viewing experience. Delete, confirm. You have delete first or cancel first. So if you come out of here and you snap a picture, okay, and then you hit, you go into playback and you hit delete, that option determines which of these come up highlighted. Obviously, you want this to be on cancel first. If you set this to delete first, you will inevitably at some point in time delete something you did not mean to delete. And yes, there is software you can purchase that will recover files that have been deleted, even if you format the memory card. But just save yourself the hassle. Put this to cancel first. It's a two-step verification that's going to guarantee you're only deleting the things that you want to delete. Power save start time. Now, I've been accused of being a Sony fanboy, but I have no problems telling you when I have an issue with something Sony's doing, and I think this is... No thought clearly went into this section of the menu. So, power save start time. This is how long your camera goes to sleep if it hasn't taken a picture in X amount of time. So we have 10 seconds, which seems absolutely ludicrous. 1 minute, which seems pretty short, but for some people I think that would be applicable. Then it jumps to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes. I think this is just asinine. I think it should have started possibly at 1 minute, maybe went to 5 minutes, maybe went to 20 minutes, or 15 minutes, and then 30 minutes, and then maybe an hour. 30 minutes is, personally speaking for me, way too long. You're spending battery you don't need to spend. If you haven't taken a picture in 5 or 10 minutes, there's no reason for that camera to stay on. For the menu as it's given us, I think 5 minutes is your optimal selection. If they had a 10 or a 15, I probably would have chosen that. One thing to consider, we're talking about the A9 in this particular video. The A9 has a newer quick wake mode. In fact, they've released firmware for many of the lenses to enable that and make it more compatible with the quick wake mode. So even if it falls asleep, which, you know, I guess you could put it on 10 seconds, so after every picture it goes right out. As soon as you hit that button, that half press on that shutter, it is nearly instantaneous, it wakes up. But just the same, 5 minutes would be my recommended setting. But again, these settings are here so you guys can customize it to how you see fit. Auto power off temperature. This brings us to the universal issue where everyone's talking about heat and overheating. Sony cameras run hot, and they run hot for a reason. They are compact bodies with very powerful computer components, computer processors in them. Anybody who's ever built a home computer or owns a home computer knows the higher end processor you put in there, the more powerful components you put in there, the more you have to step up your cooling. There are gaming computers out there, PCs that are made for gaming, that actually have a radiator and a fluid cooling system to cool the processor because the processor gets so hot from working so hard. These Sony cameras are no joke. They are supercomputers. They are leaps and bounds in technology ahead of the rest. And they're squeezed into a compact body. Because of that, you have heat. But you know, your car gets hot when you run it. It doesn't make it a bad thing. It's kind of the give and take of advancement. So in this setting, I will add one note. We just shot a wedding yesterday. We were outside. It was outside wedding and ceremony. No tents, no nothing. It was 91 degrees, and we were out there before the sun went down, probably almost 4 hours, shooting constantly. Camera never was turned off. Camera actually was left on in the bag, got jostled on somehow. So when we took it out of the bag, it was actually warm from being on in the bag. And never even much got an indicator for overheating, much less overheating. And many of the reputable people and people that we know and trust have all said the same thing. They've had little or if any issues with any type of overheating. A lot of that's been hype. But you're outside, it's warm, you're shooting a lot of 4K, you have one of the models that may be more sensitive to heat. It may bring up a warning saying, okay, we're getting hot. Just be aware if we hit a certain threshold to protect the camera, we're going to shut off. This setting here, you can take it from a standard setting to a high setting, and you're going to get the message saying, the temperature device may rise to prioritize recording time. So you hit OK, and now you're in a high mode. So what this is Sony's engineers said, okay, our cameras run hot. We got to make sure that through misuse or whatever, they're not going to get damaged from heat. So they put the setting in here. And the standard setting is actually a pretty low setting. You get a warning, and then after a few minutes, it'll shut off to protect the camera. No difference than a computer will. Now, with the setting higher, it jumps it up a good bit, so you have extra time. Most people with this setting on high, even if they get an overheat indicator, and I'm talking back as far as the 6300, even if they get an overheating indicator, typically with this setting on, it doesn't shut off. They can go and finish what they're doing, and then they'll shut down the camera because they're ready to shut it down, as opposed to it shutting off right in the middle of something important. So I'd recommend keeping that on high. NTSC and PAL selector. If you have an American model, a US model of the Sony A9, and you suddenly, for whatever reason, move to Thailand or the Ukraine or wherever, somewhere overseas, typically Asia, but parts of Europe, will use the PAL format. It's just like a broadcast standard. In America, we use NTSC. So if you ever were to go overseas and you were going to live there for a duration of time, and you wanted to do stuff beyond video, or beyond pictures, this is a video specific setting, and you wanted to distribute or play the video in those areas, you'd have to set this to record in PAL, not NTSC. If you have an American model and you live in America, don't mess with this setting because you will mess it up and not be able to play your videos here. Cleaning mode. Cleaning mode just activates a wonderful violent shaking of the sensor to knock off any loose dust. And you can physically hear it go. I'll do it here. That little that was it shaking the sensor. When it's done, you read this message. Auto cleaning is finished. Turn the power off. You can also clean the image sensor manually if necessary. If you are a person who, like myself, has foolishly messed around with a camera body without a cap on it and somehow smudged your sensor, and you have to swab it. You have to do the cleaning first, then turn it off. That locks the sensor in place. If you have in-body stabilization and you swab your sensor, that sensor's going to wiggle and jiggle over the place, and there's a very, very good chance you're going to bend, break, or dislodge one of the stabilizing arms, and you're basically screwed because cleaning your sensor does void your warranty. So if you have to have your sensor clean, I advise taking it to a service center. If you're already brave enough to get a couple of the pre-packed swabs and solution off of eBay or somewhere, make sure you do the cleaning mode first, get this menu, turn it off, then swab it. If it's not locked down, you will damage your camera. So now we have to cycle the camera off and back on and go back in. Okay. Touch operation. This turns off or on the touch screen. I leave it off because I have a wonky right eye, so I have to shoot my left eye, and with the A6500, my nose would be all over the touch screen and I'd be changing my points of focus. And I just left it off here because I do everything with the joystick now. All my focusing is on the joystick. If you have it on, it is very, very responsive to touch to focus. I could touch a bride's face, it'll zoom right in and focus on her. I prefer to do it with eye autofocus, but that option's there for you. Short of that, the touch screen on the Sony cameras are one of their technologies that they are behind everybody else. The touchscreen works wonderful, but the touchscreen is limited to what it functions on. You can't browse the menu with it. You can't select things in the menu with it. It's strictly for basically touch and focus. Demo mode is off because when you get the camera, you go through that first initialization, and then this is for, I guess, if it's a camera store has it or something, they can flip it into demo mode, and I assume it'll do a demo. But as soon as you run through the initialization of the camera, from that point on just seems to be grayed out. Okay, TCUV settings. This is for all the videographers and filmmakers out there. If you know what this setting is and you know that you need to change something in it, then you already know how to set it up, and I don't have to get into that. But essentially, when you record a video, you have a counter that runs. By default, this is set up as a counter, which will look like this. And it'll start running off tenths of a second, seconds, minutes, and hours. There's a similar thing you can do with UB, which is called user bit. And then there's different settings you can have once you enable certain things here. But again, by default, if you're just an average, you make a couple of videos, you do YouTube videos, whatever it is you may do, just leave it on counter. and don't do anything else because you don't want to mess anything up unless you know what you're doing in this menu. This is strictly a display. It really doesn't have much to do with the quality of your video or how it's going to come out. It's really just a counter display, but that's critical when you're trying to line up different segments and you're trying to sync audio and all that stuff. So, like I said, if you're the person that needs these things to be set up a certain way, you already know what you're doing, and there's nothing I can do to educate you anything further. So, we're just going to back right out of there. Remote control on or off. If you have one of those little infrared push button guys that you have to kind of stand next to or in front of the camera to trigger, this turns that sensor on or off. I leave it off. I do not use one of those little infrared remotes. When I'm doing real estate, I have a plug-in USB shutter release, a corded one that I love. If you use one of these, you have to turn this on. I don't want to waste the battery life of that sensor looking for something it's never going to see. HDMI settings. I would leave everything in here exactly how it is. Couple of things to point out. HDMI resolution. You can leave it set to auto or tell it to specifically play in the highest possible format, depending if it's 4K or HD. Or you can intentionally downgrade it depending on the TV screen. If you have a TV that's only capable of 1080i or a monitor only capable of 1080p, then you can set it. But the auto should do a pretty good job of figuring that out. 2460, if you like that cinematic movie, almost like a slow action effect, you use 24. If you like the normal, normal motion, that little faster motion we're seeing now, like 4K videos and all, you want to broadcast in the 60. HDMI info is set to on, which is why I'm able to record my menu on an external display. If I turn this off, it's only going to show on my camera. So with this off, it only shows the imagery on the monitor. Any menus, counters, all that stuff will only be displayed on the back of the camera. The rest of the stuff just leave as standard, as default. Again, unless you're a movie maker, a filmmaker, you already know if you want to change these or not, what to do with them. This is again to do with videography and filmmaking, what gets displayed to the director's monitor and what is left on camera. Control for HDMI, same thing, just leave that on. That's part of the whole display package. 4K output selector, I'm not plugged into some grand 4K monitor, so it's not giving me any options here, but that's what that's about. USB connection, auto is fine. I will say this, like anything with a computer, it'll get it wrong 30% of the time. If you are trying to do firmware updates, whether it be to a lens or a camera, save yourself a step. Come in here and set it to mass storage. Sometimes it'll pick up an auto as mass storage, but a lot of times it'll put it in MTP mode, which isn't the mode that's compatible with updating firmware. So if you're doing firmware updates, you might just want to come in here and set this to mass storage. I don't mind leaving it on mass storage because if I plug my camera in via USB, I can actually drag and drop photos and manage the photos on it right through my PC. So that's a good, I personally keep it set at mass storage. Do what you want, but if you're doing firmware, I suggest manually setting it to mass storage before initializing the software. USB LUN setting, multi or single. With today's USB hubs and 3.0 and multi-thread, I would just leave it at the multi because otherwise you're going to be stuck like you're using old technology. USB power supply on. I would leave this on. This is in the event you're using some sort of a microphone, a plug-in microphone. I use the Rode Video Micro, and it doesn't take batteries. It gets its power from the camera. Well, actually, the Video Micro. Let me rephrase that. The Video Micro itself doesn't, but there are the Rode Video mics that do. And so that sends power to the little micro USB port on the side of the camera. So if you're running an accessory that needs additional power to run, this tells the camera it's okay to send power to that jack. If you turn this off, those devices will not operate when they're plugged in. PC remote settings. Now this is a cool setting. If you are, again, a studio photographer, you already know what these settings are for. I don't have to give much explanation, but for those who don't understand, this camera has a PC connection on the side. The left side of the camera, top port, there's a LAN port, an Ethernet jack, and a PC port. And the PC port is a way to connect up to a a PC. It's also a way to sync the flash, but PC. So for tethered capture through a PC port, in this setting, you can pick whether or not you're saving the photos that you're tether capturing to PC only, or PC as well as the camera memory card. I really don't do tether capture, but when or if I ever do, I'm leaving this on PC and camera. One, we're talking again, redundant backup, and two, it's handy to have them on the camera as well. RAW and JPEG, if you were in RAW and JPEG mode, let's say I can't do it here, this will give you the image to save them both to the PC, both to the camera, or like RAW to the camera, but JPEGs to the PC. There's some further in-depth settings there. Language, real simple language selection. We're in America, we speak English, so English. If you're in America and you speak Spanish or Italian, then set it appropriately to suit your needs. Date time setup, daylight savings off or on. Day and time, you're setting your actual dates there. And date format, you have year, month, date, what we use here in America, month, day, year. And then in some of like I know in Latin America, they do day, month, year. So it's, actually in order of probably how it should be. That's it for your date and menu. Area setting, this is just your time zone. We live just south of New York by Philadelphia. So we're in the central time zone. Now this doesn't list it as Central Pacific, or I'm sorry, we're in the Eastern time zone. It doesn't list it as Eastern, Central Pacific, or Mountain, or anything like that. This all goes by the Greenwich Mean Time, which is based actually on London. So you come back here, well, not London specifically, but that's in that grouping. But so we are 5 hours behind London. That's what the -5 means. So, and here you go in here, and okay, New York City, Bogota. So if you live in that area of the country, you would set your time zone. I'm sure everybody's familiar with their time zones. Copyright info, this is where, first of all, copyright info on or off. If you are setting up copyright info, you want this set to on, otherwise what's the point of setting it up if it's not writing it to the metadata of the camera. So you have set photographer, you can come in here, hit OK, and do your typing, whatever you want to do to set the photographer name. Then you have set copyright. Now you can do either your name again, you can do a year, you can do a business name like Bates. I probably should have this set as Bates Photography, and again, or a business name and a year. That's your typical trademark. It usually say Daniel Bates 2017, whatever. For quickness, I just set it up this way. Display copyright. If you're ever unsure what your copyright reads, you come in here, display copyright, and it lists them both there so you see how it's set up. Okay, page 5. Format. This formats your memory cards. Now we have 2 slots here, and it does make you format them separately to avoid, again, accidentally erasing something you don't want to erase. Slot 1 will be the faster of the 2 capable slots if you're using a UHS-2 card. Slot 2 is the slower slot, that's the non-USH2 card. Now you can use a USH1 card in slot 1 if you do not have a UHS-2 card, but take note, back to the heating issues, anytime you're using a slower card, then you should be using an outdated card. As they were pointing out in the one video with Jason Lanier, Angler Photographer, and this was news to me, even using adapted lenses can generate extra heat in your camera. So there's a lot of reasons why some people were getting weird heat issues with their cameras, and my guess is that was one of them. They didn't have the newest memory card or whatever. So you pick your memory card you want to format, you hit it, it formats it, that's that. File number. File number runs in series. If for some reason you like to reset your series each shoot, you come in here and you click reset, and it'll reset them back to 0. Set file name. This is handy. Now, me and my wife shoot together as a team, and we both have same cameras. Every time we buy one camera, we buy 2, so we're each shooting with the same cameras and growing together as photographers. So this is a great setting. You get 3 letters to set it up. Usually it's DSC. Comes default, that's the Sony standard DSC. But so this is perfect because I changed mine to Dan, and she changes hers to EIL. And what's great is we may have a couple hundred photos from a wedding or something. They all get dumped into one common directory to then be given over to the bride. And if we get feedback, I really love this one, I really love that one, it's like a fun little competition. We go and look up which one it is, or she'll say, oh, I love the one, it's EIL0029, and they're like, oh, that was one of Eileen's shots. So it's cool. And also, if I'm pulling out pictures for a portfolio or a critique or something, I can go in and easily see which one of those are mine. Because when you're taking several hundred pictures on a day, sometimes, and me and my wife will get nearly the same shot sometimes. It's nice to be able to just know for sure what ones are yours. What you can also do with this, just a side note, a little tip, if you're not worried about setting this to your name, if you're the only one shooting on it, you can actually set this up for, okay, you're doing a wedding. Okay, well, I want all these files to be, the first 3 letters of the last name or something, just for easier file handling. Select record media. So by default, are we recording to slot 1 or slot 2? I do redundancy, which we're going to get to in a minute. Slot 1 again, if you have the UHS 2 card, the faster card, you want to go with slot 1 so you're getting the pictures out faster. If not, you go to slot 2. Another way to set this up is okay, I'm recording in slot 1 or slot 2 for photos, but now I want to do 4K video. I want the fast card. I only do video on slot 1. You manually select slot 1 and then do your recording. All that's going to be rendered insignificant in a moment because now we have recording modes. So in standard mode, you can pick and choose what you want to record to which. But as soon as you come into these other settings, simultaneous, photos get written to both cards simultaneously as you take them. Simultaneously video, same thing. I personally have it set up to simultaneous photos and video written to both cards. I typically won't do video, but I don't know if I'm going to be at a wedding and a bride's going to say to me, can't you just get just a quick clip of us cutting the cake? Of course, I'll do that for you. I don't want to have to then go in and change my settings and figure it out on the spot. It's funny how quickly you forget where your stuff is in your menu when you don't have to go in there and change it often. So I leave this set to, no matter what I do, pictures or video, write them to both. I have 128 gigabyte cards. I never have to worry about running out of space. Just write them to both and I'll handle it later. Then you have sort video and photos, sort JPEG and RAW. If you're shooting RAW and JPEG, has to be enabled for this. It'll put RAWs on one card, JPEGs on another card. They'll also put photos to one card, videos on another card. I highly suggest if you bought a full frame dual card camera and you're shooting weddings, you typically would want to run this with the redundancy backup. So you never ever have to worry about getting home, finding out your card has failed, and now you have no pictures, and what you do now have is a lawsuit. I highly suggest keeping this on simultaneous photo and video and going from there. Select record folder. If you want to set up a specific record folder outside of the standard, or let's say you're doing multiple things on the same video card, you want to set up one that's going to be reception, one that's going to be ceremony, one that's going to be the getting ready, or you're shooting 2 shoots in a day. We're doing a headshot shoot and we're going to do a fashion shoot. You can set up folders and have them pictures organized in specific folders. And you're going to do that on the next screen here. So in this screen, you're going to activate new folder. And it just generated a random folder number. Now, folder name, that was by date. We can do standard form and create a new folder. And it just created the standard, a couple of folders were created before, so now I'm up to 104. So now when I come back here to select folder, I have 104, 100, 101. Now when I format my card, these are all going to reset. They're all going to go away. But as I've created these folders, I now can say, okay, put everything in this folder specifically. And then I can come back in here and say, okay, now I'm on my other shoot, put everything in this folder. So it's a neat way to separate the images so you're not fishing them out. Things aren't being blended together. If you're doing multiple shoots in one day, and if you're doing a myriad of photos to where you really want to keep them separated, that's the quickest and easiest way to do it, short of switching out memory cards, which is what most photographers would do. Okay, so folder name, we went over that. It can be either standard or the date form. So it creates the folder with the date code as opposed to the MSWF, whatever it was. If you're ever having troubles with your memory card not displaying images properly, or you can't retrieve images, this will recover the image database. So your images are on there as raw data, just like a hard drive in a computer. Why you see those hard drive files and why you see your photographs, it's because there is a database. It's an index, a directory of all those files. When you delete a file, you're not actually deleting the file. All you're doing is you're removing it from the database. It still exists on the drive. So what this can do is if for some reason your database becomes corrupt, and before you throw your memory card in a river or light it on fire and curse it to death because you just lost everything, try coming in here first and try to do a recovery. Now, I had no errors, so I knew that going in, but you know, sometimes it'll say found and repaired error. Sometimes it will say found error, could not repair. But it's your first step into recovery. If this doesn't work, then you got to go home and invest in some software to try to recover your stuff. Display media info. This just, you can look at your memory cards, see what you have left in each of the two cards. But in your screen here, if you look up top left, you see between the M and the 3 to 2, you see I have the two memory cards. That little icon means I'm writing simultaneously to both. And I have 2,562 pictures available right now to take before I fill either one of those memory cards. They're the same size. I also would suggest that if you're doing redundancy, put the same size card in both slots so you don't run out of space on the one. Version. So this will list your body, and if you have a lens connected, the lens. This is relevant sometimes for service. They'll ask you what version are you running. You have to look it up. Firmware updates. You can see if you're on the latest firmware or not, if you need to upgrade. So that's all that does. It gives us a nice display there. And finally, setting reset. So you go in here. Initialize is going to do like you did when you first turned the camera on. It's going to set it up as a whole brand new camera. If you don't want to do all that, that's kind of what you would do before you sold your camera off to somebody. If you're just looking to reset all your network settings and all the things you may have changed that maybe now you're having a problem with and kind of set it back to factory standards, you would just do a setting reset. And that's not resetting the camera per se. That's just resetting any of the things that you changed from default. There is a difference there, but it's negotiable how big of a difference there is. It's like putting it back to factory standard, but there's some things that get preserved when you do a settings reset. And that ends this menu. And now, well, this tab of the menu. We have one more tab left, which is My Menu 1. And these are what I have my menu set up for. These are just a couple of quick things. In fact, let me turn that back on now. I had that off because I was doing real estate. When you're on a tripod, you should turn your steady shot off. If you have a lens that has a steady shot switch on it and you put it on, the lens will turn on steady shot. Even though I had it off, when I used my lens at the wedding last night, I saw it was on. It was on and grayed out because the lens has a switch and the switch was telling it to turn it on. So that could be overridden by a lens. So those are just some basic things I have my menu set to. We're going to go over how to add an item, how to sort them, how to delete them, everything else. Very, very brief. Be a very brief video, but what we're also going to do is just briefly touch base on some, now I've used it for a little while, some pointers and just some final thoughts on the overall camera, as well as, you know, things, how I've had to use things like my menu to go in and change settings for specific situations. So that'll do it for this one. Thanks again for watching. Again, we'll be putting out much more educational video content for the A9, as well as some other stuff in general. We're working on some more wedding stuff coming up. We'll probably do some stuff, on location videos for that. And before we know it, Photo Plus will be here. We'll be out there with Scott Robert Lim and Jason Lanier and all the guys from YouTube, and we'll be doing some video from the floor as well as from some workshops and some photo walks. Hopefully, you know, we'll be meeting up with a lot of these guys that we admire so much and have taken in-person classes with, and you know, hopefully we're continue to better ourselves through their expertise. So with that, please like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to keep, you know, watching all of our content that's coming up. And don't forget to visit us and like us over on facebook.com/batesphoto.net. And for Bates Photography, Big Dan Bates, and my beautiful wife Eileen, we will see you soon.